Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the More Than Social podcast, and welcome to the first official guest interview of 2024. I am relatively excited for this episode because it is going to give you some ideas of how you can really grow your business this year and how you can do it in a different way than what I typically talk about with webinars and paid ads and all that fun stuff. So, you guys know, obviously, I have this podcast, but I also am a guest on other people's podcasts. Now, why? That is to help you boost exposure. It's going to help you show up as that expert and reach new audiences. Now, the guest that we have on today, her name is Christina, and this is exactly what she does. She helps entrepreneurs, whether they are six figures, multiple six figures, seven figures. She helps them get on the right podcast to be seen by the right people and then convert people on the back end, of course. So, if you have been thinking about being a guest on people's podcasts, or if that is something that you've never thought about, but maybe you're just kind of intrigued at this point, I know you are going to love this episode. So, before I share too much, because I'm super excited about it, let me bring Christina on. Hey, Christina, welcome to the More Than Social podcast.
Thank you, Lisa. And I am so excited to be here today talking to your audience. These are my people, my fellow entrepreneurs. So I'm really, really excited to help them get inspired to get more visible, especially in 2024.
Amazing. I am very excited to have you here and talk more about the PR side of things. And like you said, getting that more exposure. Before we dive into that, let's give our audience a quick insight of who you are, where you're from, and even how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. So, my name is Christina Lenkowski, and I am the owner and founder of Publicity by Christina. And we are a PR agency that is dedicated to getting the voices of entrepreneurs out in front of their ideal audiences. And so, really, what we do that are kind of our tagline that we say is we help people go from best kept secret to the go to expert in their industry by getting in front of other people's audiences. And I've been in PR for almost 20 years at this point, which makes me feel really old. But
The
I'll just say
OG.
it makes me very seasoned. I'm a very seasoned PR pro. And so I've been doing that for a long time, working in house and at agencies for various places until I went off on my own after I had my daughter in 2015. So at that point, I kind of was doing my own thing, decided I was going to launch a course. And when I launched this course, and I'm going to tell this story because I think a lot of people can relate to this. When I launched the course, even though it was on Publicity, I did no publicity for it. Because so this is a real like moment in your life where you're like, wow, that's special. But really what happened is I got caught up in what everybody was saying to do, what they were telling me to do, and not listening to my own gut, my own knowledge, my own intuition. And when I went to launch, and I had dumped a lot of money into ads, I had spent a lot of time doing webinars. And again, I'm not anti-ad or anything like that, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know what I was getting into. And so when it came time to actually launch, it did not go well. I maybe sold like a couple courses or something like that. I remember my partner was like, "So what are we doing here?" And I was like, "Shut it. You don't know." like I'm going to get this figured out. And so the next time I went to launch my course, I started to get myself booked on podcasts. And the difference that I saw was night and day. People reaching out to me to have me speak on stages, people that were buying my course right off the shelf. They didn't need this big long, nurture sequence or anything like that. They heard me and they're like, "Oh, this lady knows what she's talking about. Like I'm just going to go ahead and get this course. This is what I need." And so at that point, I really leaned into that and really started to teach people how to get booked on podcasts, because it wasn't really something that was being taught. It wasn't something that people were really talking about, and I could tell for myself that it was a big deal. But eventually enough people came to me and were like, "Hey, could you just do it?" That I started, my agency. At first it was just me, of course, but now to the agency we have today, helping entrepreneurs and getting them booked on shows.
Amazing. I love it. And you know what? Like, I know you're not alone in that whole process. Like, so many
Yes.
people, as they're launching courses, they get into that that
Yes.
space where it's like, I know I want to hit six figures. I know I can hit six figures. It's possible
Right.
to have $1 million launch, but it's like, it's not as easy as people make it seem for one.
Yes,
But coming
yes.
from like I run ads, I do webinars all the
Yep.
time for all my clients and everything. Like there is a specific structure, but having the combination of the webinars, paid ads, your email list, your warm audience, and doing what you do, I feel like that is kind of like that golden nugget that people
Oh,
should be
100%.
striving to get to, which is
100%.
which is
100%.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, with your course, just out of curiosity, is that still your main thing or is it more the agency side of things?
It's the agency side of
Okay.
things. So I actually don't have a course
Okay.
anymore. So the first business I had was really focused on publicity for tourism region. So that's what my course was on. That was my area of expertise. And so that has been retired. That's no longer in existence. Honestly, when COVID came, anything that was really tourism related
True.
kind of went to the wayside. And so I do have a training that I offer, but no, for the most part, all of the work that we do is through our private work with clients.
Okay, amazing. And then are you mainly just focused on the podcast space?
What's all we do.
All you do.
Yes.
Okay,
So
amazing.
I believe in podcasts the most. So when I decided that I was going to start this agency, I was very wary of starting an agency because I'd worked for a lot of agencies. And so I was very much like, excuse my language, but I was like, I'm sick of this bullshit.
Mhm.
Like, and I am not putting up with it. And so when I started the agency, my agency, I was like, I'm going to do things different. And one of those big things is I have a guarantee. So when our clients work with us for a year, we guarantee we'll get them on a certain number of aligned podcasts. And that's very rare, very unique in the publicity world. But I always felt like there was a tension between the clients and the reality and the expectations that were there. And so I just like to erase that kind of off the front end, so that, and then as well as like, we're going to send unique pitches. We're never going to send cookie cutter pitches. We don't use back end services to pitch. We are literally researching, sending pitches. We're doing it that old school way, but that's also what leads to us having really, really high response rate, really high booking rates, etc. So yeah, that's kind of how this all started, but it all started, it really took me some time to come around to being like, okay, I'm going to have my own agency, but like, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah. Can we talk about that transition a bit? Like when COVID kind of shut down everything and you
Yeah.
went to the agency side, like how did you make that transition? And can you kind of share like the back and like the real stuff that people don't share on social media, what it actually takes to kind of make a switch within your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, COVID really made it happen. For me, it kind of forced me into that situation a bit because like, I don't, if you're not in the tourism world, you don't necessarily know this, but how tourism entities are funded are through hotel room tax, right? So that little amount of tax you pay every time you stay in a hotel room or an Airbnb now, like that is what goes to that tourism region to promote the area. So when that all went away, when no one's staying in hotels, when no one's traveling, when no one's doing those things, all that money is gone. And all of these places are like, all they were trying to do was keep their staff,
Mhm.
right? That's all they're trying to do. And I completely understand that. So that's what they were doing. So at that point, I was kind of like, all right, I'd already had this nudge to kind of move into teaching people how to book themselves on podcasts. So I just started putting it out there. Because it was that time during the pandemic, everyone was just at home.
Mhm.
Everyone was just, that's literally what we were doing all day. There was like nothing else to be doing. So I was like, all right, I'm going to just hop on Zoom and like, we're going to run through, how I do this work, etc. And then when it came to actually doing the agency side of things or starting to actually do the service work, I was really, I mean, I'll tell y'all, I did like a Black Friday sale 2020. I remember this. And I was like, okay, I had like kind of gotten a few clients before that on the service side, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it, whatever. And so I did just this. I've always had a guarantee, but the guarantee obviously has changed over time. So
Mhm.
at the beginning, it was 3 months. It makes me laugh now because now I work with our clients for 12 months, but it was 3 months and it was six guaranteed shows in that 3 months that I was going to get them on, which by the way is insane. But that's like,
Mhm.
I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen, etc. And I did a buy 2 months, get 1 month free deal on
Mhm.
this, and it sold.
Amazing.
It sold a lot. I was not ready for how much it was going to sell. And so that was kind of where, again, I got kind of forced in. Like, I was like, well, I need to hire somebody to help, get this fulfill on this. And so, that's when I hired my first contractor, my first publicist essentially to help with that. And then it's just grown from there. But it was like, it was messy, at the
Mhm.
beginning. Like, it was absolutely like, all these people bought it. And I was like, well, now what? And totally had to figure out like how I was going to make that happen, because I have always had really strong boundaries. I was not going to give up my life. I was only going to work a certain amount of time a day.
Mhm.
So, especially during COVID, when my kids home, all these things, so it was like, all right, how do we figure this out? And for me, it had to be hiring someone else to help out.
Yeah, yeah, and the whole hiring process, that's a topic on its own that we can go down, but
Yeah.
it's cool. At the time, not so cool. I mean, there's pros and cons. It's like,
Luckily I
"Oh,
had
success."
someone, luckily I had someone I wanted to hire.
Okay, yeah.
So I didn't have to go through a big, long, rigorous like hiring, because I had already worked with this person. And I was like, do you want to come on board? We worked out the logistics around it, and then she started. But absolutely, like, that stuff is stressful, 100%.
Mhm. Yeah, it's stressful, but also, like, so rewarding at the same time. It's like, "Oh, I did
Yes.
it, and now let's
Yeah.
figure this all out." So,
Yes.
we've all been there at a certain point
Yes.
within our business, so congrats on making it through that stressful period, and obviously now I'm assuming you have, like, the foundations and everything set up based on what you're saying. Now,
Yep.
going to podcasting, I'm very curious, why did you choose the podcasting route versus like any other type of PR out
Yeah.
there? And like my producer, she says it great. Like people are literally choosing to put you in their ear, and that is such
Yeah.
a intimate experience. So I understand the benefits, but for those who are kind of debating, is
Yeah.
podcasting the right fit for me? Talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. The reason I believe in podcasts the most, and why I believe guesting on podcasts is a fantastic avenue to build your brand, is because people get to know you on a level that they're not going to get to know you on any other form of publicity. And y'all, I've done it all. I've been in PR for 20 years. I've done TV, radio, print, all these things. But podcasts are where people really get to, they literally are hearing your voice. To your point, you are in their ear. They are hearing you. They are resonating with what you have to say. And the biggest thing for me is that you get to have a call to action. So I want you to think about, like, if you're ever wondering about this, think about other types of publicity, a TV spot, a, radio spot, a something in a print publication. You don't get to have a call to action in those. So, meaning you don't get to tell people where they can find out more about you, what they can, how they could maybe work with you, etc. Unless you have a book, there is typically nothing that you are able to sell on those types of spots.
Mhm.
And you certainly, like on a print publication, if you get quoted in a magazine, like, that's wonderful to put a logo on your website for credibility, but it ain't driving anyone to you. Okay. So I think that there's a really important distinction there for people to understand, is like, when you're looking at publicity, what do you actually want? If what you want is just to get some logos on your website to build up credibility, then there are other avenues of publicity that might make more sense. But if you're really looking to sell, to build an audience and to get people over to your product, then podcasts, in my opinion, are the best way to do that.
Amazing. And then, so you mentioned before, like when you did that Black Friday sale, you would do that 3-month period with them and
Yeah.
guarantee the six. And you said that was crazy. So, what is
Yes.
a realistic expectation for someone if someone does want to get on other people's podcasts? What would you kind of say?
Y'all ready for this? Because you're going to be like, what? But when we work with our clients, we work with them for a year, and we guarantee that we will get them booked on 24 podcasts.
Okay.
And that is what I recommend. A lot of people are going to hear that. They're going to be like, what? But here's the thing. And this is I'm an analogy person. So we're going to dive into one that I have here. But that is, publicity is like ice. And what I mean by that is, before ice freezes, 32 degrees for me, 0 degrees for Lisa and everywhere else in
Thank
the
you.
world. Yeah, it makes a lot more damn sense. When that happens, all this stuff, before that happens, I should say, all this stuff is happening under the surface that we don't see. Right? It's going under the water, but shit's changing. I'm no biology, I'm not a science, but things are happening. Okay. And I'm an English major. So that's where I'm at on this journey of what's happening on the ice freezing. But before this happens, all this stuff is happening, and all boom, suddenly the ice freezes. That's all we see, right? We see that on the end. And that is a lot of what publicity is like. You need to be showing up over and over and over and over again in front of your ideal audiences. And then boom, you will become the expert. and the person that people think of when they think of that particular thing. I know, and I've been on over 60 podcasts at this point. I know that when people think about podcast publicity, I am one of those names that they think of. And that is because I show up over and over and over again in front of those audiences, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of people will come to me and they'll be like, I don't know, man, I've been on like 3 or 4 podcasts and like I didn't really seem to make a big I'm like, yeah, it won't. Like you need to be getting on a lot more shows than that and be showing up. Well, I call it stepping into your sustainable spotlight over and over and over again. That's how that's really going to get the momentum that you want.
I love that, and like you said it right in terms of make sure that you're getting on podcasts that have your audience that you're
Your
speaking
idea.
to,
That's
like
the other key.
yeah, like, people
That's the
make
other
that
thing a lot
mistake,
of
they're
people
like,
will say to me. Yep.
"Yeah, I'll get on
Mhm.
anything." It's like, "Well,
Exactly. I'm like,
no,
well, I
like,
mean,
sure,
you
for practice
can,
if you really
but
want to,
yeah.
but, like, from a performance standpoint, conversion standpoint, like, make sure you're getting on someone that is
Yep.
essentially your audience that you wanna talk to at the end of the day." So,
I
glad that you
love that
said
you
that.
made that point. I love you made that point because it's another thing that's so important. Because again, people will say that about the 3 or 4 shows. They'll be like, "I got on these 3 or 4 shows. I didn't really see a big deal." And I'll be like, "Okay, and also who were those shows?" And they're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, a friend asked me to be on their show or a client asked me to be on their show." Okay, great. Was that your ideal audience that you were in front of? And most of the time the answer is no.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that that's not worth your time. That's not worthwhile to do. Like if it's something you want to do, go for it, but do not expect it to move the dial in your business if it's not those right audiences.
Mhm, absolutely, and then from a just a expectation side of things, to be able to move that dial, do you think it's like give it a the full year? And is that
Yes.
why you do the whole year? Yeah, give it a
Yes.
year, really
Uh-huh.
commit 2 times a month, like, get out there in front of the right people,
Yep.
and then you'll start to see it blow
Exactly.
up.
Yep, the momentum our clients see by the time they're at the end of their year is why we do it, right?
Mhm.
The first many months is like it's like a snowball effect. You know, it's like they're getting on shows, but they aren't the shows aren't starting to air yet. You know what I mean? Like things are happening. And it's really not until that 6-month mark that I would say the shows are starting to really air regularly. Things are starting to get out there regularly. And by the time they're kind of done with their year, they've seen a huge shift in the momentum in their business.
Yeah, okay, and then from a paid perspective, like, getting on podcasts for free, like, can you talk more about that side of things?
You should never pay to be on a podcast.
Okay, so there you go. You
Never.
heard it, everyone.
Yeah, you should never pay that is an ad. That is not publicity. Okay? And this is like I'll break this down really really quick for folks. There are 3 different kinds of marketing: owned, earned, and paid. Okay? So paid is shocker, the stuff you pay for, ads, maybe a sponsorship, an influencer campaign, something like that. Owned are the channels you own. Your podcast, your social media, your website, your e-newsletter, etc., things that you have control over. And then earned, which is what I focus on, that's what publicity is, where you're getting on other people's platforms and no money is exchanged. Okay. So the second money is exchanged, and I'm talking $1, okay, that becomes an ad. And there is a whole different set of rules, ethics, etc., that go around that. And a really great example of that and why I want to tell you like why you shouldn't be paying for stuff is the listener of that show does not know you paid to be on there. And that is pretty shady. And I want you to think about remember, I'm sure Lisa Ann, you remember this, but like remember 10 years ago, 15 years ago when you started having to put on social media that something was an ad or paid
Mhm.
for or sponsored. That was really the time of the rise of the influencer. And what happened is people didn't know that they were being paid to promote the products that they were talking about or the areas that they were going to, et cetera. And then when people found this out, they were mad as hell, right? They were pissed at the influencers. They were pissed at the companies. They were pissed at everybody because they were like, I thought you were just doing that. I thought you were having this person, you were talking to this person because whatever, XYZ. And so now we have to be saying that this is sponsored, this is an ad, this is brought to you by whatever, so that the consumer knows that, so that they have
Mhm.
that info there. I guarantee that's going to happen with podcasts. It just hasn't happened yet with the FCC, but it will, where they will
Mhm.
come and say, if this is paid, then you need to be disclosing that this is paid throughout the podcast episode. And some shows do. And that's like the only time where I'm like, if you want to pay, you want to get in front of that audience and they're disclosing, then that might be a good fit for you. But that's far and few between. You would be shocked, y'all that are listening, you would be shocked at the number of shows that people pay to be guests on that you don't know about.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know it was such a big thing. Like, I would pay to be on,
Yep.
like, Oprah. Like, get me in front of her for sure.
I and I would if it was disclosed.
Mhm,
Truthfully, I wouldn't otherwise because again, I just think that there's ethically something there that is once that truth is discovered, people are going to feel differently about you and they're going to feel differently about Oprah.
mhm. Yeah, no,
At
yeah,
that point.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, just meeting a
You didn't think I
celebrity
was
and
going to
go,
get on
"Oh."
this soapbox, but I was like, you're never doing that. But again, if it is something that you feel like you do want to do and they disclose and it makes sense for you, like I'm all for it. But otherwise, like just stick to not doing it,
Mhm.
not paying.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. And then is there like a certain point within a business that you feel like someone should focus on getting on people's more podcasts? Or is this something that someone can do right out the gate? They're just starting their business. They want the exposure. Like, is there a balance with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot I'll talk about a lot of our clients and kind of where they come to us at. And a lot of our clients come to us at the point where they have really built a business based on referrals and being really good at what they do, right? So they probably spent 2 to 5 years building up this business and they're at this point where they're like, I'm making multiple six figures, a year, but like I want to get to that next level. I want to get higher and I feel like I'm very stuck at this level based off of like the marketing that I have been doing. And so that is a time when a lot of people turn to us and are like, "Okay, I'm ready to have you help me get on shows, right? Be consistently showing up in front of different markets." And that's a really great time. But with that being said, you can absolutely be doing this from the beginning of your business. This isn't something that has to wait. That's not how this plays out or how it has to go. You can absolutely be putting up on your social channels or whatever like, "Hey, does anyone have a podcast? Here's who I'm looking to get in front of," right? See if there might be an opportunity there. There are a lot of different ways, and I think publicity from the get-go is a great thing. I mean, I started guesting on podcasts, obviously, from the beginning, but so I'm certainly for that. When it comes to like our services, they tend to be people that are have been doing this for a couple years and are ready to take it up to the next level.
Okay, amazing. Now, is there like certain signs that you feel like people see or feel or like to know
Right.
that this is the right step, or how does that kind of work?
Yeah, I think a big part is they realize that they're spending too much time in their business and not
Mm,
working on their business and like in the sense of growing their business. And we all get that way. Look, I'm an agency owner. I know Lisa Ann gets it, et cetera. It's like we get so caught up in what we do day to day to day and to make sure we're doing the best we can for our clients. But our business will not grow if we're not getting out there and talking about it regularly. So
mhm,
one thing that I have in my business and that I tell people about is like a visionary KPI. And so I have this key performance indicator that I'm going to show up in front of a new audience one time a week, at least one time a week. And I learned this from someone else. I really loved this. I thought this was like a great thing to think about. And it doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a podcast interview. That could be going to an event, that could be just having a coffee date with someone. There are many different ways that like that can happen, but I think it's that realization of like I need to actually get out there and talk about my business and be visible with my business because our businesses don't grow if we aren't getting in front of new people. Like
mhm.
that's just not how it works.
Yeah, no, I get that, and you're right to say, like, we do get so caught up
Oh,
inside of our
absolutely.
business.
Yes.
So, it's like I like the podcast route personally because you can show up, yes, you're gonna, like, somewhat plan for it, you're somewhat gonna
Yeah,
get
of course.
prepared for it to a certain
Yes.
extent, but when you know what you're talking about, you're the expert, like, you just show up, you have a conversation just as you would do if you're sitting next to someone. You're just
Yep.
happen to be behind a screen, a video, and have a mic, like, it's kinda
Exactly.
fun.
It is fun. Oh my gosh. I
Mhm,
mean, that's actually another way that I know people are like, that's another reason why people come to us is they know this is what they like. They like
mhm,
to talk. They like to have conversations. They know when people hear from them that that's when they are really drawn, to them. And you said it earlier, literally they're putting you in your ear, like in their ears, like they're hearing from you. And so that's another huge step that people are ready for this is they're like, I know this is the way that people really connect with me. I know
mhm.
that this is the way that I build trust with people. So I just need to be doing more of that.
Yeah, yeah. And then what about like do you coach people in terms of what to actually talk about on
Mhm.
podcasts?
Yes,
Okay.
at the beginning of our time working together, our clients, the very first thing they do is a messaging session. And so that's where we get really crystal clear. And these are, look, some of our clients, they're multi seven figure entrepreneurs. We're still doing a messaging session with them to make sure everyone is like crystal clear on what it is that we want to be talking about in front of our audiences, right?
Mhm.
So that's what we do with them first, and then before their first interview, I do a coaching session with them on how I approach interviews. So, like, what I do before, what I'm doing during, what I'm doing after, we practice, etc. We also have a public speaking expert that reviews their first couple shows and gives feedback
Oh,
on
that's
that
awesome.
too. So, absolutely, yes, we are doing that coaching work there so they can feel the most comfortable and feel like they're getting the most out of each interview.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's like, they're not comfortable, like, especially in the beginning, like,
Oh,
I've
100%.
like, this is
Yeah.
over 100 episodes for me, like, my very first episode that I did by myself for my own podcast was awful,
Yeah.
but my very first guest, or when I
Yes.
was the guest, oh my goodness, I kept playing my hair, and I was just like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and it's like, I didn't even notice it until
Yeah.
after I sent it to my parents, and my dad's like, "Stop playing with your hair," and I was like, I didn't even know that I did that, but it was so
Yeah.
uncomfortable and you could hear it in my voice. So it's like if you're listening right now and you want to be a guest on a podcast, just know it's definitely for some it's out of your comfort, but the more that you do it, the better that you're going to get. And I like that you said that you guys give feedback because sometimes you don't really know if you did it right, if it was good, what you should tweak or whatever, because you are
Mhm.
waiting for that momentum to happen to finally see the back end conversions come in. So it does
Yes.
take that time. So having that support and guidance from you guys, I think is huge from your agency side of things. But it's it can be really, really fun to have these conversations. I love having guests on the podcast.
Yes.
It,
Yeah.
I mean, also gives my listeners a break from my voice and can hear from other people.
Hey,
So
they
like
like
I
to
hate
hear it.
listening.
That's why they're listening. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean,
Exactly.
thank you, but I hate listening to my own voice. So thank you.
I think you made a really valid point, and that is that a lot of our clients, they feel the exact same way. Their first couple interviews, and I say this to everybody, look, your first, you're gonna stumble through, you're gonna sweat, you're gonna be like, "Oh, did I just sound like the biggest idiot in the world?" Even though by the way you didn't. But like that's like everybody kind of goes through this. But by
Mhm.
the time they're on 5, 10 interviews, yo, they're good.
You're crushing
Like,
it.
they're ready. They're ready to just show up, do this stuff. I was actually funny, I was talking to one of our clients recently. She just ended her a year with us, and she was like, "One of my biggest things was, like, I was so comfortable now to talk about my story, to talk about these things." Like, she got invited up at an event she was at, like, unexpectedly to kind of talk about herself, and she was like, "I just went up there, laid
Did
down, like, I've done this 24 times." Like, at this point, like, I feel really comfortable now in talking about these things, and that's one of those wins that we don't necessarily think about when we think about this work, but like feeling really comfortable and confident in like your messages and the things that you're trying to get out there is a huge, huge win for people. And it's also a big
Mhm.
thing, like why when people come to me and I can tell they're hyper focused on only being on the biggest shows in the world, I'm always like, well, first of all, we got to work our way like up to that. You don't just like drop into, the Jenna Kutchers and, the Amy Porterfields and the whatnot. But
Mhm.
secondarily, you don't even want that to be your first show. You
Yeah,
don't want
not your
that to
very
be the
first.
show that you're starting. Yeah, like you still want to be getting in front of your right audience, but get on some smaller shows, like get your legs, your sea legs, like, behind you, things like that, so that when you do get in these bigger shows, higher opportunities, like you feel really confident.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that because it's like, yes, you have a dream to go big and you
Yep.
possibly you will get there,
Yep.
just
Absolutely.
get yourself together first so when you are on those really big shows, it's like a wow opportunity, not
Yeah.
you in your mind being like, "Did I really just say that? Can they edit that
Yeah.
out? I don't know." And by the way,
Yeah.
if there ever is something that people say, you could always say, "Can you guys just edit that out? Like,
I love that
can we
you
do
said that.
that?"
Yeah.
Like
So take that fear out of your mind is what she's saying right here, because things can always be edited out.
I
Yeah.
did a podcast episode with my husband, who is my partner in my business and
Yeah.
life in general, and he said something, I was like, we're gonna cut that."
But that's the
It's like
beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. It's like you don't need to be stressed about it. I have probably, of all the podcast interviews I've done, maybe 2 were live, and the rest have all been pre-recorded. And that's another really great thing about it is like it's on your you guys' schedule too.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
one thing our clients love. We handle their scheduling for them. And so they're like, okay, this is the day and time I want to do it. We get it all booked in for them, send the calendar invite, etc. They literally, to your point, they just show up. Again, they prep
Yeah. Yeah.
beforehand. They're going to listen to an episode of the show, things like that beforehand, but like they just show up.
Yeah. Show up and
They're
do your
ready.
thing. Have fun with it.
Show up, do your thing, have fun, and truly like bringing fun back into marketing has been a big thing for a lot of our clients. Like
Mhm.
one of our clients, she did Facebook ads. She just personally, she hated it. She didn't like it. She came to us, kind of found us through happenstance. And she's like, one of the biggest things for me has been, I love my marketing again. I love to just have like
Ah,
conversations with people. I love to be able to talk to hosts that are we're both genuinely interested in like having this conversation and learning something new. And she's like, that has been one of the biggest things for me.
yeah, I love that. Okay, I have 2 more questions for you.
All right.
First one is, what is your biggest tips to help people get on the right
Mhm.
show? And second is, once you are on the show, now what?
Okay, perfect. You might have to remind me of the second question because I'm a
Okay.
mom and you guys, I forget things really quickly.
So was I.
But
That's why I said both together because I was like, I don't wanna forget.
between the two of us, we'll be able
We'll
to
figure it
remember
out.
what the second one is. So my top tips for getting booked on shows, the biggest one really is to do research. Look at the show, listen to a little bit of an episode. I'm not saying you have to listen to like 4 full episodes before you send a pitch or something like that, but for every pitch that we send, we are listening to some of that show, right? We want to make sure that we know that the vibe is right, that we're using their verbiage. Like, Lisa, you got pitched by us. So
Mhm.
the level at which we're researching, we're putting that into the pitch before we send it, etc. And I will tell you that doing that research, that is what gets hosts to remember your pitch and gets you a lot quicker to that yes. The other thing that I'll say on that is come with topics. So I think that a lot of people think that they are making it easier for a host to just like bullet out the things that they are an expert in, to be like, hey, I'm an expert in marketing, branding, sales, etc. But then when it actually comes time, that's more work for the host, right? Then they're having to think of a topic, then they're having to do all this stuff to have you come on. This goes way back to my journalism days from college. Make it as easy as possible to get to the yes. And that's what we try to do with our hosts. We're going to now they might want to kind of shift a topic. That's fine. That's completely fine. But we're just giving them that meat of like, here's what we think could really resonate with your audience.
Mhm.
You let us know what you think about this. And that is where we get a lot of bookings, is having those really solid topics in there.
And I love that you said that because that is what your guys' pitch got. Like for me, it was
Yeah.
like I get pitched a lot, and I typically just share them with my podcast producer. I'm like, "Here, deal with this, like, see if they're right
Yeah.
fit," and I don't do any of it. But when you guys sent it to me, I read it and I was like, "Oh, like I liked what you guys were saying."
Yay.
And then the
Yeah.
topics, I was like, "Oh, this one would be perfect for my audience. Like, I know this would be
Yes.
very helpful." So it's like that alone was. I mean, I love that you pointed it out because it worked for me. So this is
Yeah.
why you're here.
Yes.
But it's also like even the email that you guys put together, it was personalized. It wasn't
Mhm.
just like, "Hey, this is all about me." It's you guys made it
Yep.
also about my audience and how you can help. So that was really important to me. And I actually was the
Mhm.
one saying yes versus just, "Here, can you
I
deal with
love
this?
that.
Figure out Christina's the right fit."
I love
So
that. And
so
guys,
it works, guys.
I did not pay her to say that. So
She didn't pay to say that, and she did not pay me to be here either. We'll put that
exactly.
out there.
Everything is above board that is happening here on this podcast interview today. No, I really do appreciate you saying that. And I think that it just goes though to what I'm saying to y'all is like, take some time for that pitch, right?
Mhm.
Think about it. Again, it doesn't have to be hours. I'm not saying anything like that, but like do a little bit of research. Use their first name, you guys. I cannot even tell you how many pitches I see where people are just clearly doing like the spray and pray method, which is
Mhm.
just like, I'm going to send this pitch out to as many, it's not personalized at all. I'm going to send it to as many people as I possibly can, and we'll just kind of see what happens.
Mhm.
And that is not the way to be doing it when you want to be getting on quality shows like this one, right? You need to actually be putting some thought into it. You don't want to be that person that they're just passing along or even just hitting delete on because nothing is standing out.
Mhm. Yeah, and, like, even if you meet someone in person that you know that they have a great audience, the right fit, and you want them or you wanna be on their podcast, like, ask,
Mhm.
and I
Ask.
think that is the
Love
biggest thing.
that.
People don't ask.
Ask. I love that. That's such a great
Mhm.
point to put out there. It's like, I do ask people this a lot. I'll be like, what do you think is the worst that's going to happen? What do you think is the
Mhm.
worst that's going to happen? You go on a podcast. What do you think's the worst? And a lot of times people are like, I mess up. I always bring up the editing thing then. Lisa and I already brought it up. So we're good there. But that's something that people have fears around. And I truly say to people, I'm like, I truly think the worst that can happen is you do not do it. You do not put yourself out there, because your business will not grow if
Yeah.
you're not putting yourself out there regular. So I love that you said that.
I actually
Yeah.
had someone say to me, if you're not doing it, you're actually doing a disservice to your audience, which is
Yes,
like
absolutely.
harsh at some point, but it's also like, it's true.
Yep.
Like,
True.
sorry, but
The
it's true.
truest things are typically the harshest.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, before I forget, the second part of that question, you're on the show. Now what do you do?
Now what do you do? Cry. No, it just break down. No, I think that a couple tips that I'll give you really have to do with the relationship with the host. So the host relationship is very important, and a lot of people overlook this when it comes to podcast guesting. I guarantee Lisa Ann can give you an example. I guarantee she's had people on that are going to have fallen in these traps that I'm going to tell you about. The first thing is they do not listen to a show beforehand. They do not listen to an episode. They don't know what the heck your show is about. They're not quite sure. Before I got on with Lisa Ann today, I listened to an episode. I do it within 24 hours of every show that I'm going to guest on. And I might have listened to it before. This might be, I might have already done that before, but I'm going to recalibrate myself before I get on this interview. And what I'll do too is when we're like talking in the beginning, I'll, subtly drop in something that I was listening to the show and I really loved how you said XYZ, right? I was really, and this is before we're recording. This is before anything like that. But I'm giving that signal to the host, hey, I'm paying attention. I care about your show, and I want to make sure that I'm showing up in the best way that I possibly can. Okay. So I think that this is a really, really important thing to think about. Lisa Ann, do you have anything to add to that?
I love what you're saying. I love that. Like, I have so many people just show up and like you can tell that they
Yeah.
actually they have no idea who I am. They have no idea who the audience
Yeah.
is. Like, they don't actually care. They're just here for their self
Yep.
benefits, which, yes, that is a whole purpose of getting on other people's podcasts to get that exposure. But at the same time, if you're leading with value, if you're leading because you truly want to help people and make an
Yeah.
impact, that is going to go so much farther than just coming on and saying, hey, I want to sell to your audience and buy. Like, I don't
Yep.
care about you.
Bye. So that's what else I want to talk about is the end of the interview. Okay.
Mhm.
So at the end of the interview, you need to have a call to action, have something that you're going to be driving people to. At the end of this interview, Lisa Ann will be like, hey, Christina, where can people find out? Or at least, that's what
You're
most
hoping I say that.
that's what most folks are going to say, at the end of the interview. And because I've listened to Lisa Ann's episode, I know she's going to say that. But, at the end, that's what they're going to say. I'm going to drop that, information, and then we're going to hit end on the recording. So this is when I really coach our clients a lot, because a lot of people will just say thank you, hit end, and they peace out. Okay. That is a big miss. This has been this thing that I'm going to tell you next that I coach our clients on has been one of, I would say, usually their biggest revelations from our time working together is the host relationship and what that's done for their business. Because what happens is, and again, I'm going to do this here in a couple minutes. I'm going to genuinely thank the host for having me on the show, because y'all, it is a lot of work to put on a podcast. It is a lot of work. I am grateful to every single of the 500 plus hosts that have had our clients on that takes this time to get them in front of their ideal audiences, right? So I'm like, you are genuinely going to thank them for, which of course our clients they're already there, they are grateful, in that way to do that. But we're going to make sure we do that. But then what I always say after is, now how can I provide value to you? And I come with ideas. Okay.
Love that.
So how can I provide value to you? Would you like to do an Instagram live when this airs? Hey, do you want to, if you're putting together a reel, I'm happy to do a joint reel so that goes to my audience too. Do you have a mastermind? I'm happy to come speak in your mastermind if that's something that's of interest to you, right? There are so many different ways and so many different things. Would you like to become an affiliate partner for me? I'd love to be an affiliate partner for you and what you have going on in your business. If you have a podcast, that's a great time to add a swap in there, right? To suggest that to someone, if that makes sense. So come with those ideas and ask how you can now be providing value. And y'all, this has been one of the biggest things for our clients. This has led to speaking gigs. This has led to private mastermind trainings. This has led to book deals. This has led to many, many things for our clients because so many people don't do this.
And I like that you point that out because it's also the relation, like you said, the relationship with the host
Yes,
and the guest is important, but also besides from the actual podcast going live, the relationships that you have in business in general as entrepreneurship, like the more people you know, the better. Like if I have a client that's like, hey, I need help getting on podcast, I know who to go to. And like I
exactly.
always have that person. So like you can give that additional support. So it's like I truly, truly appreciate the relationship building aspect of it. If it's
Mhm.
even, hey, I had a shitty day and this happened on a podcast, I need someone to talk to. It's like you may not want to talk to me necessarily, but I feel like I have you in my corner to a certain point
Yes,
if you have built that relationship. If it's
yes.
just like, hey, hi, bye, peace out, I'll never talk to you again. Sorry, but you're gonna lose that
Well,
relationship, and there's missed opportunities there for sure.
there's missed opportunities 100%. And look, podcasts interviews, I mean, it's a little crass, but I always say there basically can be like a one night stand or a long term relationship. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, there's value in both. I'm not
Yeah.
here to say, that there's no value in either of those, but some people you're just really going to hit it off with and really going to want to develop like a great partnership, truly a
Mhm.
great collaboration, between your businesses. And then there's other people that you still value the work they do. You're grateful that you were on their show, et cetera, but maybe you guys just didn't have the same level of connection. And that's okay.
Mhm.
That's okay. That's naturally how we are as humans, right? But that's just kind of something to keep in mind. There is, I know that's probably not what you were expecting when you were like, what should they do when they do get an interview? But I think that it's really, really important to keep that stuff in mind. And the final thing when it comes to your relationship with hosts is share that freaking episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Share that episode. This is like the biggest pet peeve I hear from hosts is they're like, I just had this person on my show. They were great on the show or they provided a lot of value, et cetera. But I don't think that they ever shared it. I don't think that they ever talked about it, et cetera. And that hurts. Like that
Mhm.
hurts as a podcast host when you're putting so much time, effort, et cetera, into having someone on your show to then feel like they don't really care, right? They don't really
Yeah.
care about it. So make sure that you're sharing. And that, look, if you're not very active on social, like put something in your e-newsletter. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? There's different ways to do that. It doesn't have to be just like you share something to your stories or whatever. But if I do share something like that in my email or my e-newsletter, I will forward it to the host. Right. And I'll just be like, hey, thanks again. Just wanted to let you know, you wanted you to see that I did this shout out in the e-newsletter, et cetera. Okay. So that's another really big thing is like that goes into this host relationship is sharing the episode when it goes live.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I can complain about that. There's definitely been some episodes that people don't share, but at the same time, it's exposure for you even more, and
Yep.
it's still like that's why you're on the show in general is to have that
Yep.
exposure, get in front of more people. So if you're promoting it as well, it's only going to help boost and boost and boost, and it's kind of like this snowball effect from there. So I appreciate everything you've given us. A lot of tips. I know we went longer than we
I know. Sorry. I just
anticipated.
get going on this stuff. Yeah.
We're good. We're good. I appreciate it. I know the listeners appreciate it. So that question that everyone knows now is coming. Where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me at podcastpublicityquiz.com is a really great spot to figure out like what might make sense for you in your business, what step might make the most sense for you, whether that's something you want to learn to do on your own, whether that's something that you maybe want to have our team explore having our team do on your behalf. You can also find me on Instagram at publicityxchristina. It's Christina with a CH. I'm sure it'll all be in the show notes, but that's a really great place to come find me. I post things in stories a lot that I think are funny. So come find me over there.
Amazing. And I will put everything in the show notes so it's easy for you guys to find. And I always end my guest interviews off with one specific question. If you could give a fellow entrepreneur one piece of advice, doesn't have to be podcasts, any PR stuff, just one piece of advice in general, what would that piece of advice be for you?
I mean, I know you said it doesn't have to be about podcasts, PR, or anything like that, but I would say get visible. Get out there. That is really hard for us as entrepreneurs. Again, I know we already talked about it, but like we want to just do what we do and, XYZ and kind of get along with it. But our businesses won't survive if we aren't getting out there. So, whatever that, kind of fear is, and we all have stuff, I totally get it that might be in your head about this. Like, just know you just got to get started and it's going to get a lot easier.
Amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for everything that you've shared with us. Guys,
Thank
if you have any
you.
questions regarding podcasting, you want to get on more podcasts, connect with Christina. All her information will be in the show notes. And I will talk to you guys soon. See you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.